Superman! Howdy ho everybody, it is I, Bodo. And in this video, I would like to talk about the recent Superman movie. I usually talk about mythology, history, folklore, but in this video, I really want to slightly deviate from my usual content and talk to you about American folklore and American mythology, that is comic books, and a new movie, Superman. I don't remember the rest of the tagline, which actually really left an impression on me. And finally, American propaganda is back in its swing and going on the right path. As you know, I'm not American. The new viewers who don't know, I'm from Georgia, the real Georgia, country of Georgia. That gives me a bit of a nuanced perspective, especially about the topic of like Janapur or Boravia conflict that is in the movie, that is kind of close to home, that I want to mention, say a few words, and I wanted to make a video about comic books for a long time and how it's an American propaganda machine to promulgate American exceptionalism all around the world, and Superman is its a shining beacon and symbol of truth, justice, and the American way. I think the last part of American way was taken out recently, but still I think Superman as a symbol represents the ideals of what America should be. Maybe not what it is always and what it kinda does around the world, but what it should and what it should aspire to. That's why I have complicated feelings about Superman, sometimes angry about Americans for not treating him well, and sometimes not liking how he's portrayed. But in this movie, before going into my complicated thoughts about comic books, as I personally want to create comic books myself, I've drawn some comic books, I've started working on a few projects. Unfortunately, life gets in the way of doing what you want, but as an aspiring comic book artist, as a fledgling comic book artist, I have been influenced heavily by Western American comic books, but not just Western, of course. Manga is also really heavily inspiring me, and not just manga, Belgian and French comics. If you ask me, my favorite comic book character is Obelix from Asterix and Obelix, but let's put them aside. Let's focus on comic books. But first, I'll try to tell my opinions about the movies. Just to keep in mind, this video is gonna be a bit scattered. I want to make a focused, dedicated video about comic books, what they represent, how their stories affect the world. But in this video, I'll just share my thoughts, and if you want more, I'll get into it later. But first, the movie itself. It's how to say it. The movie is good, Superman is great. That's I think the overall consensus, that the movie itself, even for James Gunn, I think James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy series were much better, and I think this one is better than the Suicide Squad, that the movie, the first DC movie James Gunn did. But as a movie, first things first, I am really happy that we finally, after, 40, 50, 100 years of making comic book adaptations, finally started making actual comic book movies with comic book silliness. As someone who loves silly things, especially silly comic books, I am more than happy, because past 20 years, the movies about comic books have been more or less ashamed that they are comic book movies and have been trying to downplay their comic book influence. But after 20 or 25 or even more and more years. Again, like just Superman serials goes back to my favorite Fleischer animations that were amazing in 1941, I think. Then there are Superman serials, then there are radio plays, of course comic books start from 1930s, almost 100 years now, and many adaptations. Of course, 1970s Matt Reeves, if I'm terrible with names. 1970s Superman series are still my favorite, even the declining quality continuation movies, and also Lois and Superman. I think the 90s not animated live action movie is really influential. That was dubbed in my country, and that's where my love of Superman started. Of course, animated series, movies. Basically, as a dedicated nerd, I haven't read all of the comic books, but I watched I think all of the movies, even the 1960s and 70s low quality Justice Friends and that kind of world. I've seen a couple of episodes of that just to get my nerd cred up higher. So, all right, in those adaptations of Superman, the core ideas of him being an immigrant from another world, coming to this world, becoming a symbol of hope, being non-human but still fighting for human ideals, that has been the core of the character. I've had this thought that Superman and Batman represent different ideal versions of American politics, of what an ideal man is. It's a controversial idea. I don't want to 100% agree with this, but here's my hot take. Superman is the ideal of what Democrats believe, and Batman is the ideal of what Republicans believe to be an ideal superhero. So what I mean, so Superman is an immigrant, is a person from a different world, different culture, created by immigrant Jewish artists, as it's been stated many times, and represents not just Zack Snyder kind of took Superman in more of a Christian allegory, but his roots, I think, closely go to Moses symbolism, if you want to go into biblical symbolism. But he represents immigrant who comes to the country, adapts to the country and its culture and its customs, and absorbs its ideals, and with his immense power and with his immense superpower, as you may or may not know, superpower is of course connected to superheroes, but it also represents a world-dominating country, a new name for an empire, basically. So a superpower would be America and Soviet Union, and now China, those like great powers that influence other countries. So Superman is what America should be, again in more Democrat perspective of an immigrant who adapts to the culture, who carries its values, and with its immense strength and immense power, does his best to manage his abilities, like restrain himself, even though he has all this power, like world-destroying amount of power. He restrains himself. He cares about nature. He cares about animals. He cares about America, but not just America, the whole world, and uses his power to protect, of course, America and the rest of the planet that adopted him. Basically, I think that is the democratic ideal version of America, that America is this great power with nuclear bombs, with this amount of military and financial capabilities, and they're a nation of immigrants, and they have to focus their power to not only take care of themselves and their country and limit themselves as much as possible to not abuse their power, and also use their power to influence the world and take care of everyone around the world and be the leader of the free world, basically. And again, Batman, that's a bit shaky. He represents the basically super rich, powerful, strong masculine man who went through again Batman's lore, really everyone is familiar with, but quickly saying his parents were killed by the rich people, ending up in a poor people area, where in the crime alley, in the poor crime-ridden neighborhood, his parents get killed, and he dedicates himself not to, for example, fight corruption in the system, uses finances to uproot corrupt politician, the crooked cops, the mafia that exists, to use his immense wealth to actually fight and take care of the systemic issues of Gotham. But he dedicates it on himself, his individual capabilities, uses his wealth and his capability to become physically stronger and physically basically beat up everyone that is a criminal, because of course that is a poor misrepresentation of what Batman is. Of course, wait, where's my Batman book? But it's pretty close to the Dark Knight Returns interpretation of Batman, that world is filled with chaos and violence. That's just human nature, and we need a powerful, strong man that will just beat up everyone that is evil and beat them in the corner. And only individual Ubermensch with all the wealth and physical and mental and all the peak human capabilities, only he can dispatch justice, and only that type of person can wield the power to determine what is good and what is right and who needs to be punished. So some might disagree. I might disagree with my take about Batman, but this is the kind of a idea I have. Democratic ideal of what America should be represented as Superman, and the Republican ideal of what America should be represented in Batman. This dark, vengeful, rich and powerful, with all the gadgets and all the rockets and torpedoes and all that nonsense, standing lone wolf, looking at the world, and if someone behaves evil because they're inherently evil, he's gonna jump and beat them up and throw shurikens, bad shurikens, and batarangs, sorry, I apologize, fake fan, and a bunch of gadgets to blow them up and destroy them. So that's kind of went off topic immediately. Okay, this video is barely holding on its axis, so I apologize for that. So continuing, again, going back to the movie, I feel, again, as I've stated in the beginning, the movie itself is okay. I would say 8.5. It's, I wouldn't say 9 or 10. I believe his Guardian of the Galaxy movies are first one is 9, second one is 10, and third one is 8. But this one is 8, between 8 and 9, because as a movie, if you take Superman out of it, it's okay. It's not phenomenal, it's nothing crazy. It's a good comic book adaptation of a good storyline. It really reminded me of Justice League or Justice League Unlimited, a good episode and good arc of Justice League Unlimited. Sorry. But as portrayal of Superman, and as a society starving for good, kind heroes, as I mentioned, for the last 20 to 30 years, superhero adaptations have been ashamed of adapting directly superheroes of heroic good guys with colorful clothes, with tights on top of their clothes, fighting for truth, justice, and good-hearted heroes fighting inherently evil monsters. And lately, comic book stories themselves, starting from this guy right here, started to creep in with like moral relativism, kind of hero being a dark, vengeful person, and complexity, and gray and muddiness, and that kind of seeped into movies, especially in the DC part of the comic book adaptations. Marvel is kind of playing around with it, but DC especially went full into a dark moral relativist of like what is good, what is evil, who are heroes evil themselves, and Zack Snyder's Superman is, I don't know, I am really really sad for what's the actor that played Superman in Zack Snyder's movies, Mark Hamill, right? Yeah, no, Mark Hamill is the Star Wars something or other. He's a great guy. I think he himself is disappointed, and I'm disappointed for him because he's a good actor. He's a good guy, I feel like, and but the script didn't provide, and the movie didn't provide him avenues to explore Superman as a good hero, not this like tortured, struggling to be good in a dark world where his morals are challenged by the evil society, and he himself struggled with his the power, and I really didn't like that interpretation, because Superman is a good guy. There are good people in the world, and he is one of them. And like recently we've seen those movie adaptations of Superman being like Superman like heroes. What if an asshole was a Superman like in The Boys, and what if Superman had a dark mission coming to planet Earth in with Omni-Man in Invincible, and that idea was put into it to, I think, directly to criticize this type of heroes, that Superman, as we find out in the movie, was sent from his Kryptonian parents to Earth to dominate and rule over. We, again, I'm not gonna do play-by-play. I think all of you have seen the movie, and that's been one of the major changes of the comic book, because usually Krypton is sometimes corrupted. Kryptonian elite are these like old assholes, or sometimes it's more fascist. But his parents, Jor-El and I'm sorry, I'm blanking on his mother's name, they're both usually portrayed as like good scientists who try to warn and save their planet and warden society, but best they could do is send their son into the space and hope for the best, because they couldn't fix their planet. Like again, parallels to the like scientists warning about global warming, so they okay, going off topic. So in the movie, that is one of the major changes that I am kind of shaky on. I don't like dissing Kal-El's parents. But it brings some complexity to the story, and directly challenges stories such as we see in The Boys, such as we see in with Omni-Man and Viltrumites. That you might have been sent here to do evil things, but you still can choose to be good. That is actually making the character more closer to Goku from Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. Goku was a Namekian, another race of warriors sent to Earth to conquer it, but he, as a child, hit his head and became stupid and forgot his mission, and when he finds out, he still decides to be champion of good and righteousness, but he just really wants to fight strong opponents. Again, jumping around the topic, again, going back to the movie. I'm sorry, ADHD brain, it's middle of the night. I had crazy works past few days, and more to do tomorrow, so I'm trying to focus. Sorry guys for rambling and jumping around. Another change that I'm kind of shaky on is Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor in this story is a complete villain, completely detestable human to who represents, I think, everything nasty and everything ugly about humanity. But again, this is more closely tied to modern issues. One of the I don't even know if I want to get into this topic. I don't know how much should I talk about politics on my channel, but I often do because crazy things are happening in my country and in all over the world. I'll get into it later. But Lex Luthor represents your modern day tech oligarch and tech billionaire who have been influencing politics, who have been going in and messing around in the American elections, messing around in world politics, especially Elon Musk. I don't even want to mention his name, dignify his presence, but I'm really stunned how blatantly evil he turned out to be, especially from my perspective. Again, I'm Georgian, really close by with the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and seeing Elon Musk first come in to be like, I'm going to help Ukraine with Starlink and give them all the technology they need to fight and defend themselves. He got one phone call from Putin and he's like, historical right of Russia to take back Kiev and rebuild the Kievan Rus and all. Oh my God. And then his complete turn to the right, and not just regular right, like fascistic right, doing the Roman salute. How was that a fucking defense of what he did? Yes, this thing is called the Roman salute. I don't even want to do it. So, what the Nazis did, it was a Roman salute. So, like, how did we just move on from that? How did we just... And I don't even think that this movie was filmed a few weeks ago. It's probably 2.5, 3 years ago. Was written, filmed, produced, edited, and released recently. So I don't know, crazy things started happening about 2-3 years ago, but yeah, I don't know. And that's what the new image of Lex Luthor is. He's basically everything that is detestable about modern day tech billionaires who want to basically create Lextopia or what, Lexiland or what he wanted to carve that and the poor, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the other country's name in the conflict. So unironically, that's what the modern day tech oligarch fascists are trying to do, to become basically techno-feudalists and rule over humanity. And basically watching them and listening to their podcasts and trying to understand them, I almost completely lost my faith in humanity and am shocked that we even let them exist like that. How are we letting them be? Like, I thank God I don't have superpowers. So, but that's the problem I have, again, because I much more like comic book Lex Luthor as a mad genius. That he started out as a mad genius that slowly went into, like, especially in the 80s, as more of a capitalist pig dog evil billionaire archetype. But I don't know, I still liked him as more of a morally dubious. He does bad things, but he might have some sort of maybe not noble intentions, but some ideals that he actually believes, other than spite and hatred that Lex in the movie has. Of course, again, it's a modern adaptation. It's not 1980s Lex Luthor or 1990s Lex Luthor. His modern Lex Luthor representing what his character represents, the tech oligarchs. He was a tech oligarch, and now he took on this modern idea, and unironically hits much harder because it captured the cruel nature and unfulfilled nature. That's especially unfulfilled nature. That's what I see in Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, and other billionaires, that they have all the money in the world, billions upon billions of power, money and power. They can do so many things, change the world for the better, do so many great things, but they're miserable, and they focus their time and energy to do evil, not just something like that hurts you but it's beneficial to someone, that's something that is like maybe morally dubious. Straight up evil things, cartoonishly evil things. And I have been, thanks for this movie, because I've been going on a dark spiral, looking at the world, looking at my own country that's fully become fascist dictatorship, America that is almost a complete fascist dictatorship, Europe that has slowly more and more tyrannical and fascist governments coming to power again, due to those billionaires, as shown in the movie, financing all the assholes and all the evil dictators all around the world. Which is, I can't believe that American movie actually went there and actually talked about this. This is comic books have always been political. Comic books have always talked about current day issues. Coming from someone outside of your country and outside of the time period out of the comics were written, even I can get the political and cultural context most of the comic books were written. What do you think mutants represent? Who do you think Professor X and Magneto represent? That's a whole side issue. And I am really glad that pop culture movies that have mostly tried to be apolitical, try to avoid or usually just be tools and vehicles of American propaganda, especially military propaganda, actually tackling this subject. Of course, it's not perfect, it has many flaws, and most of the conversation is of course about war between Moravia and Janempur, if I'm not mistaken, and everyone's been like, which current day conflict it represents? Is it, for example, Israel and Palestine? Is it Ukraine and Russia? I'm here to say it's actually about Russia and Georgia. 2008 war, that's what it actually represents. And I'm that kid holding that flag saying, Superman save me, Superman, Superman. It was me. I'm not actually fully joking, because as an artist, as a creator who wants to tell stories, you usually are much better off not making direct one-to-one comparison. If it was straight up Israel and Palestine, it wouldn't go as hard and speak to so many people. When it's fictional countries that can symbolically represent any conflict where a powerful military nation with the backing of foreign powers, especially foreign billionaires, comes into a much weaker and much less organized country for like regime change or political restructuring as a basis for invading and then committing horrible acts. I think the writers, especially I would say James Gunn, decided to mix in elements both from Russia-Ukraine conflict, Palestine-Israel conflict, and many others. I think core inspiration would be Balkan conflicts. That's how American comic book creators love to invent crazy, silly, small countries in the Balkans. Again, looking at you, Latveria, and Dr. Doom, he's my favorite character, because sometimes I think about it, and if I was in a comic book world, there's a high chance that I would be him, because he is him. I really love Dr. Doom, and he's a really complex character that I can get. Let's get into him later. But that is, I think, core inspiration. of course, more inspiration could be, more direct parallels could be made with Israel and Palestine. Of course, the caricaturic evil dictator has been compared to the first prime minister of Israel and many other similar leaders of Israel. And I hope I'm pronouncing the country's name right, fake country's name right, is more presented as Middle Eastern brown people in more like sandy, deserty area. But also could be the leader speaks either really terrible Russian. I speak Russian, again, complicated history. Or like plays with Russian language to create some sort of a Slavic amalgamation, like Belarusian or something like that. And that, of course, the country itself and its stylings is more similar to Russia and its dictator. But some reviewers and some political talking heads have pointed out that in this conflict, America is supporting Moravia, the fake country that is trying to invade a smaller nation, and that makes it Israel and Palestine. But I would like to remind you how close of a relationship currently Trump and Putin have. They're basically best friends. That Trump is still not getting that he's being manipulated after everything. I think he's coming around, but I'm not putting my hopes on it. And how much the right wing of America, for the love of God, I do not understand why does the right wing of America like or support Russia. Recent story, some Texan man went to Russia to escape American propaganda, LGBT propaganda, is now currently enlisted in the army and sent to the front lines. Again, I don't want anyone to die, but sometimes you get what you deserve, you know. I do not understand, why does American right support? Aren't you guys Christian? How can you not see through their blatant lies? They are the number one country that kills other Christians. And they are a fake atheist country that put on like a wallpaper of Christianity. This is more real books than the Russians are Christians. And it's again, I've made many rants about Russia, and I think, again, going back to the movie's parallels, again, my own country, Georgia, was invaded about 4 times in last 30 years. Most recently in 2008, when I was 10 to 11 years old. And in that period, I was really big fan of superhero stories. And when the war started, of course, I didn't believe that superheroes were real. But in my heart of hearts, I thought of America and believed America to be land of Superman, you know, truth, justice, and American way. That country that created Superman, country that created Spider-Man, Batman, and those kind of characters that fight for the values that I believe in, and the values that my country is trying to aspire to and become closer to the Western world, and are being invaded, are being killed and punished for doing so. That Western world will act and react and be like, the Russia, evil dictatorship, cannot invade and slaughter innocent. We're not brown enough for Rajampurians, but close enough, you know. There's a small desert in Georgia as well. So, in that sense, I really felt represented, and not even represented. That's now wrong word to use, because, of course, going back to the war, unfortunately, American warships did come, and they brought water in the most high abundance, clean water country in the world. Again, thanks, sure. But in 2008, Russia learned that world is not gonna do anything other than wag its fingers. So they prepared for 2014 invasion of Ukraine. Again, got a double wag of fingers, and then again, a few years later, in 2021-22, full-scale invasion started, where they completely knowing that Western world are a bunch of pansies who pretend to value freedom, democracy, and truth and justice are just talking points to distract the people. That's where basically I slowly lost the image and the ideal of what Superman represents. That again, America's soul is Superman in my understanding and my belief, and America is furthest from this ideal that it has ever been, and that of course is represented in your guys' movie at that time. Everything is dark, everything is gray, everyone is depressed, everyone talks about morally gray things. Superman fights Zod and destroys the city that he's actually supposed to protect, and doesn't really care about humanity other than one chick. And I was really disappointed and lost hope in the ideals that Superman and the other superheroes represented, because when we needed you guys most, only thing we got was a finger wagging. And the Western world, Western Europe, America still continued supporting Russia, buying their oil, supporting the empire of Russia to gain more power, gain more influence. And basically our country, unfortunately, Georgia currently is basically taken over by Russia serving agents. Regime change was successful, and terrible things are going on in my country. But at least in movies, Superman, rather than ignore the plights of everyone outside of America, actually stands up, defies his government, and does what is right and protects people from being killed in a senseless, bloody war of imperial aggression. And thankfully, it also mentioned how sometimes America is involved in those conflicts and lets those horrible things happen, and would turn on a dime against his own heroes and against his own citizens if they stop supporting that imperial struggle. And especially with Lex Luthor, how tech billionaires are using those wars to get themselves richer and gain more power. And I don't even think Elon Musk is getting much richer and more power with supporting Russia. I think it's just a power trip. He might have got some weird promises. Again, there's a term, verbovka, in Russian, where you bullshit someone so much, tell them everything they want to hear, promise them the world, promise them everything, but knowing that you are completely lying. And unfortunately, I do not understand how you guys are so gullible to believe every lie, every blatant lie. Oh my God. Just listening to Americans discuss this conflict in Ukraine, oh my God, just leftists and right-wingers both just taking on every propaganda, every lie. You can literally just do a simple Google search and check if any of their lies are true. But no, left-wingers be like, America is the ultimate evil, so everything against America is good. And right-wingers will be like, America, everyone that is pretending to be conservative and pretending to be pro-Christian values and family values, I'm not going to check, I'm not going to do any surface level research about the country that I'm moving to, because Texas is becoming woke. So I'm going to go live in Russia and then get sent into the front lines to die in a pointless war. Many such cases. How can you? Don't you have some sort of self-respect to not fall for such blatant bullshit? Come on. I don't know. I'm sorry. I completely start ranting on different topics. We're talking about superheroes, Superman, and basically that's. I don't even know if I actually even reviewed any part of the movie. I just told you my unchoreographed and unrehearsed thought, verbal diarrhea. All right. Let's try to focus. So, what was I trying to say, jumping around here and there? So, my main point, why I enjoyed the movie. This is a movie review, apparently, that I forgot. This movie actually represents a good comic book style story that is much closer to a comic book narrative, or again my favorite, Justice League Unlimited, high quality series of Justice League Unlimited. It's not the greatest, it's not top 10 or top 9, but I believe it's solid 8.5. Other characters in the movie, I'm really glad that Guy Gardner finally got a screen adaptation. I cannot believe that Guy Gardner got a movie representation before Jon Stewart, but he is actually my favorite. Okay, Kilowog is my favorite. Then the Planet Green Lantern, I forgot his name. Then the Squirrel one, and then Guy Gardner Green Lantern. He's one of my favorite Green Lanterns. I'm glad that he got representation. I hoped Hawkgirl would have gotten more screen time, but because she has a really interesting backstory of being like a alien coming to Earth as an Egyptian pharaoh, reincarnated, and falling in love with her lover, and a jealous suitor or jealous warlock constantly killing them and then coming back and falling in love again. It's a great story. I really like that character, and Hawkman and Hawkgirl are really interesting. Who else? Mr. Terrific. Finally, I can't believe this is why I love James Gunn. He really loves going deep and finding interesting characters that nobody's talking about and bringing some sort of new spark into it, revamping, reimagining him, and it's a great performance. I've had never been a super fan of Mr. Terrific, but I've always known about him, especially in the animated series. He often shows up. What's the bloody name of the guy with the materials and the Element Man, the Chemicals Man? I'm such a fake fan. I actually like that character, but I can't remember his name. The guy that can create different elements and materials. He's also a deep pool. I've seen him in different animated series. He was a prominent character in Batman Brave and the Bold. That is actually my favorite comic book adaptation of Batman. I really love Silver Age, silly comics with like goofy characters. So I am happy and I am fulfilled. Finally, comic books is back to being silly, back to being goofy. I don't like Marvel's approach of like tongue-in-cheek being like, oh, look how silly we are and how unserious we are. No, you can be goofy and serious at the same time. You can have a silly imaginary world where crazy things happen, but characters still react to it with emotion, with believability. That is one of the reasons I really don't like modern Marvel. It's too tongue-in-cheek and too unserious about their silliness. I like when comic books are into their own silliness, completely taking it 100%, maybe like playing around with it, like I don't know, James Gunn's Suicide Squad kind of played around with comic book silliness as well, but keeping the heart alive. Because one of the biggest problems I find myself with superhero movies, especially lately, they are always trying to make it serious and realistic. Why? Comic books are silly. That's why they're fun. You gotta get Mr. McSpicklick and Batmite and other goofy characters in the like the mafia baby boss face or whatever. I really like when comic books still play it silly, still show silly characters with imaginative powers, but take their own world seriously and play with it with emotion, with heart, with passion. That's what's great about comic books. Not trying to make Batman realistic. If you make superheroes realistic, it becomes unrealistic. More you try to make superheroes realistic, more unrealistic it becomes. It's like a bell curve, you know, the uncanny valley. More realistic something looks, there's a point where it becomes less and less realistic, and something that is 99.999% looking like a human, you are going to find it much scarier and much uglier. A similar thing in storytelling. If you have a silly premise, it's better for the world to be silly and everything to make sense in their silly world than to try to make the world realistic, because that one silly element, the fact that someone is crazy enough to dress themselves in armor and run around in the streets, I'm laughing because I do that shit. I'll talk about it later. Let me finish this part. The fact that someone actually puts on a bad costume and goes around and beats up people is completely ridiculous, insane even. If someone did that in the real world, he would be sent in a psych ward. Nobody sane, other than nobody sane would actually do that. That's because when you try to make something more realistic, every little bit that is unrealistic jumps out. But when you present an inherently silly world with different physics, different understanding, different values, and different structures, the audience is much more willing to accept crazy, magical, sci-fi, and whimsical elements. That's I think why this movie worked. One reason is that it didn't take itself too seriously. The other reason is that I'm not talking about myself, the general audience is already familiar with Superman, with superheroes, with comic book stories, and introducing a fully silly comic book story world is not as jarring. Maybe you couldn't do it in the early 2000s, but now society is ready. Similarly, how it took over 20 years for Wolverine to finally put on his yellow and black suit, like yellow and blue or yellow and black suit, like he did in the Deadpool and Wolverine, but only in Deadpool story they finally could manage to do it in a silly, high-octane comic book story where they could finally put the character that is one of the most popular superheroes in his actual visual depiction. And that's why I'm happy that hopefully we are moving into a new era with this movie, and subsequent movie will abandon this morally gray, dark edge to it. Again, I am as guilty of loving morally gray, dark, edgy stories. I was a Miller head for a long time. Even before I read Dark Knight Returns, I was a huge fan of Sin City stories. I had all of the books, but I gave a lot of them out. So I'm really big fan of dark stories, but as you can see, it's not gray, it's black and it's white. So of course gray stories can exist, and grayness should be recognized that most of the world is in the middle, in the gray area, but gray doesn't come from nowhere. There is light, there is darkness. Light is shining and it is creating shadows, and absence of light is darkness. Yes, the world is in between that, and also has color, and also has spandex, and also can be silly, but there exists ideal of good and there exists the darkness of evil, and someone can fall into the darkness of evil, and it's a deep pit that can drag you and people around you and the society around you, because the darkness is slowly the people are forced to get used to darkness, and when they're used to darkness, even slightly light gray becomes too shiny and too bright and too silly and unbelievable. And I'm really happy that bright, colorful red, blue light shone through the darkness, and we finally have a good, kind-hearted hero to aspire to. No longer, I am so fucking tired of this morally gray, literally me, depressive asshole main characters that, oh no, what if the main character was this asshole, irredeemable, terrible person, but everyone still romanticized them. I am sick of it. Again, I was a teenager who was in love with like morally gray, dark heroes. That's all the comics that have remaining. I had far more comics, but I can't hold on to things. I have inherent need to give people gifts, and if I love something, I just give it to other people because I think I don't deserve them. Okay, that's a whole nother story. So I am the guilty part here that I fell in love with Dark Knight Returns interpretation of Batman. My favorite movies and favorite series were Sin City series, and that was one of my biggest inspiration. But that was me coping and trying to protect my innocent, bright-hearted, light-hearted self in the dark world that we exist in. And recently, I've been seriously trying to reopen my heart and reopen my light and kind-hearted self to the world, but again, fell into the biggest, darkest pit that has ever been. Unfortunately, not ever been. It's the darker periods have been throughout our history. Even my own country's history, we've been through one of the oldest countries. If you don't know about Georgia, it's a really small country, but really, really old one. We are one of the oldest people and one of the oldest country, and we are in between Europe and Asia and North and South, and every empire, every world conqueror went through here, pillaged, vandalized, destroyed our land. So we had to constantly fight for our survival. And thankfully, we had many great heroes, many people who sacrificed themselves with the love of their country, with the love of and passion that I see in a lot of superheroes. That heroes, actual, real, living people who had that light and dedication that fictional characters usually have, but unfortunately didn't have the superpowers to stand up against massive empires. But against all odds, we still survived. But we survived through cuts, bruises, abuse, terrible history, terrible struggles. And unfortunately, we are going through one of those dark periods right now as well. And through this dark period, again, we've reviewed, hopefully, as much as I could focus on the movie itself. Now going into what comic book superhero Superman itself represents to me is that going back to origins of superhero, it was created during 20th century, and its peak, I believe, was during the Cold War. And I'm really interested in that part of comic books history, how comic books represented other parts of the world and how it represented Soviet Union, for example. There is underlying narrative that unfortunately never really got focused on, that the Soviet Union and America had some sort of a superhero arms race, like nuclear arms race and superhero arms race. But superhero comics and those kind of stories never became popular in Soviet Union and post-Soviet space, other than superhero movies that came from the West. So your movies, your media, your rock and roll, your freedom-loving Coca-Cola, jeans, and Superman and superheroes, all those ideas were contraband that were snuck into our country, and my parents' generation had to watch those movies, listen to those albums, wear those clothes in secret, because secret police and KGB and moral police were constantly on the tail of people who are trying to be punk rock, who are trying to be rock and roll, who believed in freedom of individual expression, because Soviet Union was deeply anti-individualistic, and that is one of the great reasons that it destroyed. Another narrative in the in the Superman movie, is that kindness is punk rock, and punk rock and rock and roll is one of the main hammers that destroyed the Berlin Wall and destroyed Soviet Union. Because again, when through contraband and through listening to secret radio stations that promulgated Western propaganda of like American movies about cowboys, Indians, rock and roll, Arnold Schwarzenegger, heroes beating down villains, individualistic heroes fighting for their passions and expressing themselves. Those ideas were the main, maybe not the main, but culturally one of the main hammers that collapsed the system. Again, going back to my country's history, in the 1970s, late 1970s, Soviet Union tried to ban Georgian language and bring in Russian language to slowly, again, for 200 years of Russian occupation before Russian Empire, later Soviet Union, they tried their best to erase local culture and identity. But every time they could take away our political identity and our religious independence. But when it came to culture, when it came to language and what is meant to be Georgian, they always got a heavy pushback. And one thing that happened in the late 70s was that when they tried to ban Georgian language and promote Russian language instead, there was a massive protest. Again, during all of Soviet Union, there were each generation, each maybe 10 to 15 to 20 years, had a massive protest against Russian Soviet occupation, and each of them were crushed horribly with bloodshed, with slaughter, with many children killed in those protests, because protests are usually led by young students. So these protests were also led by young students, and rather than crush these protests and slaughter the people, they decided to acquiesce, stop, pull back from destroying Georgian language independence, and they decided to let Georgians have first cultural music festival, which actually turned into first re-emergence of the underground rock and roll movement that was in the sewers, in the dungeons underground, where the police, moral police and the secret police couldn't find them, because listening to rock and roll, watching American movies could literally get you sent to gulags. So that moment where Georgians were finally allowed to actually express themselves and their protest gained power was the first crack that slowly led to the dissolution of Soviet Union, especially from a cultural front. And in that concert and in that festival, all the great Soviet bands, be it Kino, be it Aquarium, be it many others, came to the forefront, and many Georgian rock and roll musicians came to be. And again, one of the interesting things is that Georgia was always able to get that, like, Western media, Western ideas, Western music. It wasn't because we were constantly at the verge of rebelling and there was a large black market in the country. We had easier ability to get contraband, such as, again, as I mentioned, rock and roll music, punk music, and were the vehicle of our Western culture coming through and spreading throughout Soviet Union. And also when Soviet Union was trying to perestroika, reform itself and become more open, American artists and American musicians, actors were usually sent to St. Petersburg, Moscow, and Tbilisi, because Tbilisi, again, Georgia was an independent, developed country long before Russia came around, and we have had. It's one of more fancier part of the Soviet Union. Rest of the places were basically just Khrushchevkas and disaster. So that's why through that we had many great American artists coming to the country. My father was actually involved in some of those projects. He was a hippie, a rock and roller. And my uncles, actually, the two of my uncles are famous rock musicians in my country, and led that cultural revolution to bring punk rock and rebellious spirit to the nation. That culminated in the 1989 massive protest that in the April of 9th, which was the first major crack of Soviet dissolution and led through the collapse of Soviet Union. So those American ideas, the American media, American propaganda spread from Georgia, and not just Georgia, western parts of Soviet Union, and the Warsaw Pact countries also had a close connection to the Western media and had access to it. But deep into the core of Soviet Union, we had a lot of easy access to those media and those cultures, and we were one of the main spreaders of it. So that, when it collapsed, we had this idea of what West is, of freedom, of rock and roll, of punk rock, of individualism, of working hard and finding your way through life. But unfortunately, the 90s were the darkest period of our history. Constant warfare, ethnic tensions were, again, it's Superman never showed up, so what you see in the movies of Superman and superheroes like Guy Gardner and Hawkgirl destroying tanks and stopping invasion, unfortunately didn't happen. I grew up in after one war and before the other, so my life was shaped and defined by these wars that of large countries bullying smaller countries, using ethnic tensions and fake reasons to invade and terrorize people. So these ideals of individualism, of rock and roll, of self-expression is what managed to collapse Soviet Union. But the biggest tragedy that we went through, and I went through, is realizing that there is no more rock and roll, and maybe there never was. The punk rock is a fake story, and Superman is not real, and it's real to me. God damn it. That's one of the tragedies and one of the leading causes of cynicism. And again, Georgia was one of the most pro-Western leaning, pro-American, pro-EU countries, but because of wars and because so much trauma was gathered and so many negative influences from Russia, from other BRICS countries that were trying to be pushed into and shoved into, we are in a really dark spot morally and mentally. And the ideal of West, the image of truth, justice, and the American way, has unfortunately completely collapsed, especially in Donald Trump's America, seeing how they treat immigrants. Because again, you guys were telling us how great America is. You guys were filling our heads that if we come to America, our dreams will come true. And when, again, I have never immigrated to anyone, and I don't plan to. I'm ride or die for Georgia. Oh God. But so many people saw what you presented, saw the media, saw the movies, saw the stories of American dream, of working hard, and if you believe in yourself and if you try hard, you can actually succeed. And that's why they came. That's why they came to your countries, because they believed in the myth, in the story, in the legend that you guys spread. And now you turn to them and turn to those people who come here to fight for the dreams that your parents and your grandparents came to do, and the ideals that you spread to us. And now you turn to them and send them to gulags and send them to to concentration camps and throw them who knows where. Why? I don't know, man. How can a country of immigrants, country of Superman, a man from another planet who came and became symbol of America, have so much hatred for immigrants? Okay, I understand. People should come in legally, but have you looked at? Okay, again, to be blatantly honest, I've had chances, and I've had as a child, my parents actually won a green card, but they never went. I don't know, was it a good choice or not? They decided to return to Georgia and raise me in a not so nice part of the country, not so nice of a time period. Maybe my life would have been much greater. Yes, I often think about what if my parents actually took that green card and went to America, and what my life would have been then. Maybe every night. But then later in life, I and my family members and I actually had chances to go there, but I still chose to stay in my country and try to make my own country better. But again, I was a fool. It seems more and more impossible. But so many people do want to come to your country, do want to aspire and be American, follow the Superman dream of becoming a beacon of hope and beacon of justice in your world. But have you actually looked at how difficult and how complicated it is to get citizenships? People have been living in your countries for decades, for 70 to 50 years, and never managed to get citizenship, because it's deliberately difficult to keep people undocumented, to use them as cheap labor. They're specifically and deliberately making a system where there's a lower class of people of who they can bully and control and manipulate and use as cheap labor. That's why you have such terrible migrant problem. It's not about the border. Of course, I believe you guys need to fix your problems. I believe immigration always should be legal and lawful, but it is your responsibility to make sure to follow demands. Okay, if you don't want some immigrants, don't make movies about how great America is and how cool immigrants are coming to America. You know, I don't know. I have really complicated feelings about that. So, I don't know. If you want to keep your borders closed, keep them closed. Who needs you? Okay, maybe that's a bit harsh, but again, I never wanted to. Okay, I sometimes did think about what if my family actually used the green card and went to America, but I personally want to make my country a better place and follow the dreams and ideals of what superheroes implanted in me. If you've seen my some of my videos, I actually past 200, 300 days non-stop in my country. There have been protests against a legitimate government that faked the election, stole our freedom, and have captured us as proxies of Russians, and let so many Russians in, so many, not just Russians, other country members, because many of Georgians are running away to other countries, including America, but mostly Western Europe. And to replace them, there are thousands and thousands, maybe even million immigrants are being let into my country. So I understand it's not great to see waves and waves of foreigners coming into your country that have no interest of actually assimilating and only want to basically do a soft coup and softly take over your country. Unfortunately, that's not what happened in your country, and that's actually what happened in my country. That's, I don't know, it's a complicated story. I've made dedicated videos about it, where I actually dress up in suit of armor, wear a helmet like this, and talk about truth, justice, and the Georgian way. And not just Georgian, European ideals, Western ideals of freedom, of independent thought, of freedom of speech, of self-expression, and of course what I care most deeply about, preservation of culture and promotion of old and dying culture. That's the flag that I carry, and that's the fight I fight in. Maybe I don't go around beating up supervillains, but again, I've thought about this a lot, making as I've said it before in the beginning, I am a comic book creator, not a really good one because I haven't finished anything. I've started many projects, haven't finished any of them, have tons and tons of sketches of pre-planning and sketches of few pages, never managed to actually finish any of them, but still consider myself as a comic book pre-creator. I haven't fully created the projects, but I sometimes thought about, could I create a Georgian superhero? Could I, now I try to be one, but the thought that always comes to my mind is that no, I want to make a more dedicated and complex video about this without all this rambling. That fundamental thing about American superheroes and comic books is that they fight for status quo, and they usually fight against injustices that are more, I don't, that's why I really need to write this down. How do I even, basically superheroes usually try to defend how things are, maybe make things slightly better, tackle social problems, but rarely do they actually face political problems. Sometimes they do. Again, Captain America, the symbol of American soldiers, American patriotism, for a while became a nomad because of American foreign politics. So they often do tackle it again. Iron Man originally became superhero to atone for his sins for participating in, I think, Vietnam War, but in later adaptations it was Afghanistan or some Middle Eastern conflict. You guys are always there blowing up sand and people in the sand, but it usually is there to uphold the status quo, to maybe stop some deviation, stop the corruption. The corruption isn't the norm, it's a deviation. So superhero is there to fix it and bring it back to the existing normal. So if I had superpowers, and if I told the story of someone from my country who had superpowers, they wouldn't be a Superman type or Captain America type. They will be closer to what Dr. Doom is in Americans' eyes, some crazy dictator who controls his country with an iron fist. But from what I've thought of what I would do, I wouldn't go after small petty criminals, because I know that those small petty criminals, the corrupt government, everything actually terrible going on in my country, from the monsters who roam the streets and steal from people, from the monsters in the government who again steal from people, and all of that is always going back to Russia and its imperial ambitions to control my country and invade, maybe through soft power, by Russian style of soft power of controlling the government, bribing and controlling the criminal organizations and the government entities, to use the titushkas and the criminals to beat up protesters, and the government to jail them. So my superhero and my protector wouldn't be fighting, I don't know, someone in a silly costume. He would be fighting the imperialist oppressors that are affecting our daily life right now. Right, friends, we're surrounded. They're attacking us from over there. They're attacking us from over there. And they're attacking us from over there. And I think over there as well.
Look,
Yes.
They are on the end of the valley. They are really there.
then we're surrounded. But no, they're surrounded by us. We will never give up. So, I've actually thought of making, if I ever made a comic books about superheroes, mostly taking place in 1980s during the height of Cold War. This topic of like superhero arms race between two superpower nations really interests me. And usually American superhero stories are American, and they really don't care about any other country besides America. Barely any. Okay, there are some, but there are probably more alien superheroes from other planets than there are superheroes from other countries. Marvel actually has it much better if you look at it. DC has it the worst, I think. Maybe the most famous non-American superhero from DC Comics would be Wonder Woman from made-up country of Themyscira. So that's what also comic books love. Again, going back to the main topic of Superman, in the story there are like Bravia and Jananpur or something like that. So they usually use fake countries. They create fake countries because they don't want to anger the countries they want to actually talk about, or more likely that Bravia, Americans probably heard Bravia more than actual real countries like Albania or even Georgia, my own country. So I'm pretty sure more Americans know about Wakanda than Zimbabwe, for example. Americans really have blinders on when it comes to outside of their country, and you guys pretend to be the leaders of the free world, but have no complete disdain and no interest in what actually happens in other countries. That is especially reflected in your movies. Because what happened after the fall of Soviet Union and after more shift through American domination is that before then, in the mid 20th century and during 20th century, every country produced their own films, their own art, their own movies, their own books. Then slowly it shifted to the major superpower like Soviet Union, American like Western allies, and English-speaking world can be boiled down into one world, like England and America. England has its own culture, but it diffuses into its former colonies such as Australia and Canada, and also America, and they influence each other. But France has its own culture and movies that I really love, but unfortunately they don't make. They're coming back to it, especially with animation. I really appreciate that. But in the movie department, I haven't seen any good French movies lately. If you know any, share them down below. But Italy was a major producer of films. Germany, again, I come from Soviet film family. My great grandfather was the theater director. My grandfather was a famous Soviet movie star. My family members, all of them, had connection to the movie and film and arts of the Soviet Union and post-Soviet space. Unfortunately, the art industry was the first thing to go, because art is a privilege. Art is especially expensive art such as movies and animation that got thrown aside really quickly. There have been many movies made in my country as well as in Georgia and in Russia and the many other post-Soviet space, but the unity and power that it had during Soviet Union and market that it had, it no longer exists. So past, especially after the 90s and 2000s, America has been dominating the world stage, especially in movies. Slowly, I would say, Japan is coming around. Japan has been chugging along for a long time. They have great movies, and animation, of course, is peak. As a otaku, I can say that. Korea has been making strides in film industry. China, I think China had much better days in like kung fu movies that they've never truly been able to recapture, but they're still trying. But Europe, again, France is struggling, England is kind of into the Anglosphere. So main producers of world pop culture has been America. And that's one of the greatest victories of American propaganda, is that they can basically shape world understanding, world culture, world music, world art through their industries such as Hollywood and the music industry and all of that. Even comic books. Someone from, again, real country of Georgia, not a state, a country, have been a big fan of those properties. But that's another problem that I face and I often tackle in my videos, is that if America doesn't recognize you, you don't exist, basically, in the imagination. And only American ideals and American imagination and American stories are being told. And my hope for as a kid was that somehow I can kinda manage to get through into Hollywood and manage to like stake my own place and become part of that world and make movies in Hollywood and tell my stories with Hollywood and to promote my own culture, my own history, my own mythology. Because again, one of the biggest tragedies that I face is that kids today in my country and my generation and older than me and many others don't know any of the Georgian cultural figures, be it real historical figures or my special interest, mythological and folklore heroes. Again, kids are raised and develop their moral framework and ideological framework through those high fantasy stories, be it fairy tales, be it comic books, be it anything else. That's what creates the frameworks they later develop into their worldview. So one of the most important things are fairy tales and stories. From each culture has to create their own fairy tales, their own stories to raise children of their morality and their own standards. Of course, love, be kind, help others, be nice to strangers, but be wary of them. All of those ideas are universal, but the cultural figures are uniquely from that region. And if you want your culture to survive, you need to raise those kids on those cultural beliefs. And again, I was raised on superhero stories, but I was also raised on my own cultural and my own mythology. Unfortunately, I wasn't provided with the mythology. I had to seek it out. I had to learn it. I had to learn. It's really hard to come by. And my goals and my passions with my videos is somehow to preserve and promote my local culture. One way I was hoping to was to promote it to the Western audience, so it becomes at least somewhat to some group of people recognizable, that there is some sort of there exists a little country of Georgia that is in Caucasus, that has a unique culture, unique history, and unique mythology. But again, by the dominance of Western American media, only your guys' story, only Western American stories are being told on world stage and are being promoted. And again, maybe I was wrong into hoping that there is a possibility that I could use the dominance of America and go into the American media sphere and use that avenue and that space to create my own stories. Of course, it's an impossible dream, but kids got a dream, you know. But now I think through internet, through media, and through my channel, that's why I'm trying to build my own channel, I could hopefully do it on my own with my own resources, which is really difficult, but relatively more plausible. So, again, going back to Superman and Superman stories, is that I am slowly trying to wrap around this really long video, this complete mess of a video of rambling. I really enjoyed the modern Superman movie. I enjoyed, especially as someone from the perspective of Jananpur and Baravian conflict, of someone who was that kid who hoped for a Superman to come and save him and protect him from evil invaders and evil imperial oppressors. Unfortunately, Superman never came, but this movie says that Superman might not be able to come, but his friends who are inspired by his heroism will come and will protect you. And his friends supposed to, I hopefully means, I don't know, America wakes up and actually follows through on their ideals and believes that I genuinely appreciate and genuinely inspired my country to break away from Soviet oppression through bloodshed, through warfare, through horrible experiences. Those ideals, those beliefs were close to our own. We Georgians, again, thousands of years of fighting for freedom. So the notion of freedom and justice and liberty really hits home to us. That's why we want to be your friends, be with you, fight for freedom, fight for justice. But again, that dream was lost, and hopefully the story of Superman who stands up against bullies, who is genuinely good, that is so, that, I don't know, this I don't even know, and I don't even know how to express how much it meant to me to see another person that is genuinely good, and like maybe naive, maybe childish, but still believes that there is such a thing as goodness, and there is such a thing as love, and there is such a thing as justice to aspire to, and believes in humanity and human value, and believes that there is inherent good in everyone and everything. That's I don't know, man, that really hits home, because I believe and I hope I am that kind of a person, because again, you are not a good person, you do good things. So I try my best, I dedicate my life trying to do as much good as possible. I go out in the streets wearing my superhero outfit, full armored up like a mix of medieval and modern hero. That's what because that's what I believe. I believe in Western ideals of justice, of fighting for freedom and fighting for those ideals, but also ancient history and ancient roots that need to continue in the modern age. I'm really happy that James Gunn made this movie. I'm really happy that Superman is doing well. I'm really happy it's returning and saying that being good, being kind is punk rock, because I come from a punk rock family, and I tell you, yes, it is. And I'm hopefully in this dark period where everyone is angry, everyone is hateful, everyone wants to spread darkness and misery, and wants to dim the lights and go into the darkness. Hopefully this inspires more people to idealize not this like morally gray, dubious anti-heroes, but actually doing good. It's difficult, it's hard, it hurts so much, it hurts so much to be good, and it hurts so much to care about others and care about so many horrible things that are going on. It hurts so much to know that there is pain around the world and you can't do anything about it. But you can do something about it. You can go and help someone close by. Do a little bit of good. And if, like there is a Georgian proverb, do good, put it on a rock, and walk in front, and you'll find it in front of you. Meaning that if you actually do something good without expecting anything behind, and other people also do it, the goodness will find you, because you do good, the other person does good without expecting anything in return, without hoping anything to gain out of it, other than bringing more good and kindness and justice and love into this world. I was deep in my depression before watching this movie, because I really lost hope with people around me, with my own country, with the country that I foolishly thought that actually believed in those ideas that they put in their propaganda. But hopefully those ideas can come back, even with you guys in the West and in my own country, and hopefully through the darkness we can follow the light and bring back truth, justice, and human way. Let's just say that humanity, that's what should win in the end of the day, because humans might be flawed. As Superman said, I might get scared, I might worry, I might make mistakes, but every day I try to do my best and I try to help my fellow man. And that really inspired me to hope again, because I would never let go of that belief of goodness, of justice, of love of my fellow man. But it was surrounded by black smog of what's going on today, and how much misery and how much hatred and how much ignorance is around. And again, I've rambled far too long. At the end of it, thank you to my Patreon supporters who are actually help me to stay alive in these really difficult times. I don't know, it's really dark today, but again, we must carry the torch, and we must carry the torch of freedom and bring light into this darkness. Hopefully this movie actually can reignite and re-energize my heart and my passion to go back to comic books, because again, every time I try to make my own comic books about heroes, about good guys fighting evil, something so evil and something so devastating happens. All of my plans get ruined. I was supposed to, I don't even want to get into it. I don't know. It was the drop of copium and hopium that I really desperately needed, and hopefully more is to come. I will try my best to do as much good as possible, and hopefully you can try to do at least the amount of good that you can. Help your neighbor, help your friend, even giving donating $1 to someone, not for me, like anyone else. You find another artist, another creative person, another passionate person, another activist who believes in good, who believes in freedom, and who believes in individuals being able to unite together to fight against evil. Again, I've rambled too much. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, watch my other videos. I beg of you. My videos are struggling a lot, especially to hear more thoughts. If you want about what I believe in, please check out my protest videos, where I actually try to do what Superman would approve of. So finally, thank you for watching, and take care.
Hello friends, we're at the Georgian protests in our government, slowly but now quite fast turning towards Russia, rejecting EU participation. Our government has declined basically to join the European Union for 4 years at least. That's bullshit. And we're fighting the eternal battle between chaos and order, between tyranny and freedom, and between good and evil. This battle has been raging on since the age of myths and legends, and unfortunately this battle will never end as long as evil exists. And we, the good guys, the heroes, the knights of Georgia, will never stop fighting as long as we draw breath. And we'll never let villains such as Georgian Dream Party, quote-unquote Dream Party, rule us. So, fight shall never end as long as we stand here. Hopefully we will win, and hopefully evil never rises again. But as long as, I don't know, humanity is humanity, we must never stop. All right.